I had just settled in for a quiet evening when my phone buzzed with an alert from my security system. Motion detected. Backyard. Frowning, I pulled up the live feed from my CCTV camera, and what I saw made my blood boil. Karen. She was strutting through my backyard like she owned the place, poking at my patio furniture, inspecting my grill, and even measuring my fence with a tape measure. I threw on my shoes and stormed outside. "Karen, what the hell are you doing in my yard?" I demanded. She turned, completely unfazed, as if she had every right to be there.
Oh, don't be so dramatic. I'm just making sure your property meets HOA standards. This fence looks too high, and your furniture is way too close to the property line. We can't have the neighborhood looking like a mess.
She snapped with a dismissive wave of her hand. I clenched my fists. "Karen, this is private property. You can't just waltz in here." She rolled her eyes and replied,
Actually, I can. The HOA has the right to inspect yards to maintain the community aesthetic.
I pointed to the security camera mounted above my back door, its red light blinking. "You just broke into my yard and it's all on camera." Karen paled for a moment, then scoffed.
Oh, please, who's going to care? I'm looking out for the community. You should be thanking me.
I didn't bother arguing further. Instead, I pulled out my phone and dialed. "Yeah, I need to report a trespasser on my property." 15 minutes later, a police car pulled up, red and blue lights flashing against the night. A tall officer stepped out, adjusting his belt. "All right, what's going on here?" he asked as he surveyed the scene. Before I could speak, Karen rushed forward, her voice high with feigned urgency.
Officer, thank God you're here. This man is refusing to comply with HOA guidelines. His fence is too high, and his backyard is lowering our property values.
The officer raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, are you saying you entered his property without permission?" She scoffed.
It's not trespassing if it's for the good of the community.
I then pulled up the CCTV footage on my phone and showed it to the officer, who watched as Karen opened my gate and began snooping around. Sighing, the officer pulled out his notepad. "Ma'am, you're being cited for trespassing." Karen's jaw dropped.
You can't be serious. I was doing my duty.
The officer replied, "Your duty just got you a fine, and if you step on this property again, you'll be arrested for criminal trespassing." Karen stood there, speechless, as I grinned and waved goodbye while the officer returned to his patrol car. The next day at the HOA meeting, murmurs of disbelief filled the room. Neighbors recounted the incident, shaking their heads at Karen's audacity. Even the HOA president offered a formal apology for the disturbance. Later that afternoon, while reviewing the incident on my security feed, a neighbor stopped by. "Man, that was unreal. I can't believe Karen thought she had the right to invade your property," he said. I replied, "Some people just need a reality check." As evening fell, I received a text from the HOA board confirming that Karen had been removed from her position as head of the HOA Violations Committee and was issued an official warning. For the next few days, Karen avoided me completely. But that didn't last long. A few evenings later, I heard a loud banging on my door. I checked the peephole inside. Karen. I opened it just a crack. "What do you want, Karen?" She was fuming.
Do you have any idea what you've done? I got fined, and now the HOA is considering removing me from my committee. All because you couldn't handle a simple yard inspection.
I crossed my arms. "No, Karen. You got fined because you trespassed on my property and acted like you were above the law. Maybe next time you'll think twice before breaking into someone's yard." She let out a frustrated growl.
You're ruining this neighborhood.
I chuckled. "Funny. I was about to say the same thing about you." Karen stormed off, and from that day forward, she never tried to enforce another imaginary rule again. I ran outside after hearing the sound of something terrible. Sparks, smoke, coming from my outdoor outlet. Someone's ATV screeches to a stop, and jumping off at Karen, the smug president of our local homeowners association. "Karen, what are you doing in my yard?" She starts screaming.
You broke my ATV. This is terrorism. This is sabotage.
But I actually knew exactly what happened. But let's rewind a little. Before I tell you the full story, comment below, where are you watching from? Karen fined people for anything that didn't match her personal vision of community perfection. Overgrown bushes? That's an instant $50 fine. Someone had the audacity to park their car for more than an hour on the street, $75 for unsightly street clutter. A neighbor left their Christmas lights up past January, a $200 fine for festive overkill. One guy got fined because his front door was too bold. It was literally painted a soft shade of gray, but to Karen, it clashed with the neighborhood aesthetic. No bird bath was positioned correctly. No flagpole could be higher than exactly 3 feet. If your lawn had a single weed, you could expect a printed notice by sunrise. She even once issued a fine because a neighbor's bicycle was left out on their porch, said it was unsightly clutter. So yeah, Karen didn't just like rules, she was the rules. She once made a couple remove their Halloween pumpkins from their porch, claiming they violated the autumn decor guidelines for being too orange and bold. Karen banned basketball hoops because they promoted hooliganism and gang culture, a 12-year-old cried. She didn't care. She told someone their welcome mat was too trendy. It just said, "Home Sweet Home." She forced a guy to repaint his fence twice because she claimed the shade of beige was too vibrant for this area. When a family planted a tree in their backyard, Karen called it a neighborhood obstruction. She once reported a small dog for being too loud because it barked once when someone walked by. Another time, she filed a complaint because someone put up a hammock in their yard. And when a neighbor hosted a potluck dinner on Labor Day, Karen called the HOA board mid-meal to report excessive food odors and a potential health code violation. There wasn't even a single complaint about the food, it was just a backyard cookout. And now she has reached me. When my electric bill started climbing, I figured, maybe the AC's overworking, or the fridge is acting up. Nothing crazy, just summer things, right? But then I noticed something weird. Every single day, like clockwork, at exactly 6:45 a.m., there'd be a tiny surge. The lights would flicker, my phone would buzz off the charger, and the toaster would reset mid-toast. Like someone was plugging a Tesla-powered spaceship into my outlet. At first, I thought I was imagining it. But one evening, coming home a little earlier than usual, I saw it with my own eyes. Karen, in full HOA president glory, purple windbreaker, clipboard in hand, Bluetooth earpiece blinking like she was on a CIA mission. And there it was, her pride and joy. A bright red ATV, freshly washed, and guess what was humming next to it? A bright orange extension cord, running straight into my outdoor outlet. I walked up like I'd caught someone siphoning gas from my car. "Karen, are you kidding me?" I shouted.
Oh, I'm just borrowing a little power. It's for the community, for the HOA's operational needs.
That's my bill, my house. That's literally theft, Karen.
We're a community. Sharing is part of our covenant mutual support.
Oh, she meant that covenant, the one she wrote herself in Comic Sans over the weekend while watching HGTV. But I'm not the type to just call the cops. Nah, that'd be too easy. I'm an engineer, electrician by training, petty by nature. So I decided to leave Karen a little gift. Something special, from my heart. Right behind that outdoor outlet, I installed a custom-built rig, a reverse induction detector, a timer, and a load spike trigger. What does that mean in plain English? Well, if I plug something in, toaster, leaf blower, Christmas lights, nothing happens. Totally normal. But if someone else tries to draw a continuous load for more than 10 minutes, click. The timer flips. The voltage spikes. And the whole circuit feeds back a glorious jolt. Just enough to fry a charger, trip a breaker, and maybe lightly toast an ego. Then came Monday morning. The sun had barely stretched, and there she was, Karen, creeping down the sidewalk like a budget version of a mall cop on a mission. Her ATV, fire truck red and twice as obnoxious, humming like it had something to prove. She rolled up to my house like she was storming Normandy. Looked both ways. Checked for cameras, they were there, 3 of them, in glorious HD. Then she did it. Plugged in the cord. Gave herself a smug little nod, like she'd just performed a public service. Saturday down on her HOA enforcement unit throne, and got comfy. She even pulled out a clipboard, like she was about to start citing lawn violations. And then, at 11 minutes and 4 seconds, zap, sparks, smoke, panic. Her ATV coughed, screamed, and then died like a drama queen. Karen, launched. I swear she caught air, like a cat flung off a Roomba. She hit the grass, rolled, and popped up like it was my fault gravity existed. I strolled out with my coffee, robe swaying in the breeze like a battle flag. Took a sip, looked at the scene. "Everything all right, Karen? Apocalypse hit early today?" She shrieked.
You sabotaged me. You destroyed HOA property.
"No, Karen. You stole electricity, again. And just like clockwork, she called the cops. The same officer as in the incident with the fence near the lake. He pulled up, took one look at the scorched extension cord, then at Karen, breathing like a dragon mid-lawsuit, then at me, standing there like an ad for peace and quiet.
Let me guess. You again?
Yep, but this time with upgrades. I handed him the smart meter logs. Voltage spikes, timestamps. And the cherry on top? A screenshot from my security cam. Frame by frame beauty. The cop didn't even crack a smile. Just sighed and said,
Karen, that's power theft. You're looking at a fine. Maybe worse.
Karen went full banshee.
I am the HOA president.
And with the smoothest comeback I've ever heard, he just replied,
You're also currently disconnected from the grid.
A week later, I got a letter. It was from the State Board of Electrical Safety. Apparently, Karen had filed a formal complaint, accusing me of intentional damage to community property. I couldn't help but laugh. I mean, intentional damage? Seriously? Still, I dressed the part, suit, tie, the whole 9 yards. I walked in with a flash drive, photos, and printed bills to back up my case. Meanwhile, Karen walked in carrying a cardboard ATV, as if it had been to therapy, and a diagram labeled, Flow of Positive Energy in the Neighborhood. I swear it looked like something out of an elementary school science fair, but I kept my cool. We sat down. Karen went off, talking about the energy disruptions and how my actions had threatened the stability of the HOA's ecosystem. She even started pointing to her diagram with a highlighter, tracing lines from her cardboard ATV to the positive energy flow that she claimed we all shared. I kept my focus. It wasn't easy though. 15 minutes later, the board chair leaned forward and finally spoke.
Sir, you're within your rights to protect your property. Karen, you stole electricity. Complaint denied.
Karen's face went redder than her ATV. She stood up so fast her chair flew backward. She stormed out, sparking and whining like her vehicle had just been hit by lightning. I took a moment to savor the victory, but I knew this wasn't the end. With Karen, it never is. I was sitting in the living room. In front of me, a photo of my father, a fresh frame, candles, a few friends, silence, just presence. No one was saying anything unnecessary, because this wasn't a day for words. And right at that moment, it started. Loud music, bass, laughter. I stepped onto the porch and saw everything. Right across from my house, a party, a snack table, guests, someone dancing right on the sidewalk, and Karen in the center, smiling, holding a mic like a corporate event host. In that moment, I didn't feel grief or peace. Just one question in my head. Is she serious? But to understand how it all got to this, we need to go back a bit. It all started with something small. I had just parked my car in front of my house. A regular spot, perfectly between the lines, not blocking anyone. A few minutes later, Karen showed up.
Your car is parked incorrectly,
She said, arms crossed. I'm within the allowed space. Everything's fine.
It breaks the overall parking symmetry on the street. That's not acceptable.
I looked across the road. Her car was parked the same way. And yours? I asked calmly.
Mine's an exception. I've been parking here for 10 years.
So the rules apply to everyone except you?
I'm the HOA president. I have the authority to enforce compliance.
I didn't say anything, just turned around and walked into the house. It didn't seem serious. A few days later, a tragic event happened. My father was sitting in the living room, on the couch. The television was on. Everything seemed normal. And then he just lost consciousness. I ran to him, tried everything, no reaction. I immediately called an ambulance. Within minutes, I could hear the siren, but the vehicle was stopped at the entrance to our neighborhood. It wouldn't come any further. I rushed outside and saw what was happening. Karen had blocked them. She stood directly in front of the barrier.
They don't have an entry permit.
She shouted. This is an emergency, the paramedic called back. We need to get through immediately.
This is a private community. No request, no entry.
Ma'am, move out of the way, the driver demanded.
You're violating regulations.
She yelled over them. Then the police arrived. An officer stepped out of the car and approached her calmly, but firmly. Ma'am, this is an emergency response. Let the ambulance through. Your actions are unlawful. She froze for a second, said nothing, then finally stepped aside. The ambulance got through. They took my father away in critical condition. A month in the hospital, and he passed away. After the funeral, we came back home. I didn't invite many people, just a few close ones. We sat quietly in the living room. Someone held a cup of tea. Someone stayed silent. On the table, a framed photo of my dad. The air was still, calm, that kind of quiet where no words are needed. I was just listening to someone share a childhood memory, and I thought, just a few hours, just silence. Then came the first bass. Loud, sharp, like a slap against the window. Then music, laughter, shouting. I stood up, stepped out onto the porch and saw it. Right across the street, the party was already in full swing. Neighbors with drinks, kids running, people yelling, balloons, snack tables, music blasting from large speakers. And in the center of it all, Karen, in a bright shirt, laughing, waving. I stood there for a moment, and then I realized, this isn't going to happen. I crossed the street, didn't run, didn't yell, just walked straight toward her. Karen noticed me and even smiled.
Hey!
She said, as if nothing had happened. What's the occasion? I asked.
Oh, just a little gathering. People need to unwind.
After a funeral?
Well, we didn't want to ruin your day. It's not in your yard.
You knew I was holding a memorial today.
Yes, but life goes on, doesn't it?
I buried my father just a few hours ago, and you threw a picnic under my window. Karen shrugged.
Honestly, we planned it a while ago. People deserve a little fun.
You didn't just ruin the day. You're the reason he's not here. If the ambulance had arrived on time, he might still be alive. But you blocked it. You decided no permit, no entry. Karen went silent. For the first time, she had nothing to say. And now you're blasting music across the neighborhood. On the day I bury my dad?
If you have a problem,
She started. I already took care of it, but not through the HOA. And I walked away. For real. For good. The police arrived 20 minutes later. 2 officers. Calm, but without smiles. They pulled up in front of Karen's house, stepped out, and walked straight toward her. I stood off to the side, just watching. Karen came out to meet them, waving her arms.
what's going on? It's just a party. I didn't break any rules.
One of the officers cut her off immediately. Ma'am, we've received multiple complaints about you. Your actions constitute a pattern of public disturbance. Last time, you delayed emergency responders. Today, you hosted a loud event next to a funeral.
That's not illegal.
She tried to argue. You were issued formal warnings. You ignored them. Now there have to be consequences. You're being placed under arrest for willful disturbance of the peace and failure to comply with police directives, the officer added. Karen tried to say something else, but they were already leading her to the car. Since that day, she hasn't even looked my way. Finally, silence. A few days had passed. The yard was quiet, and so was my mind. After everything that happened, I didn't expect peace, but it came, quietly, without warning. I was watering the bushes along the fence when I heard footsteps. Familiar, confident. I wasn't even surprised. Karen appeared, just like always.
Can I have a minute?
I nodded silently. I was thinking maybe we should just smooth things over.
I was thinking maybe we should just smooth things over. We're neighbors, and it's not healthy to see each other every day with this tension. For you, for me. Maybe we can just forget it happened, right?
Forget? I repeated. Forget what exactly?
Well, the whole thing, the party, the police, the memorial. It was just a misunderstanding.
That wasn't a misunderstanding, Karen. That was a choice. Your choice to throw a party on the day I buried my father.
I didn't know the exact date.
She said quickly. But you knew he had died, and that we'd be home. Karen looked away.
Look, I didn't mean any harm. Really, it just happened. And you turned it into a tragedy. You made me the villain.
And you're not? She rolled her eyes.
You always did love drama. I was just trying to do something nice for the community.
Loud music and balloons across from a memorial, that's your idea of nice? She sighed.
Fine. Clearly you're not ready to have a civil conversation. I'm trying to offer a compromise and you...
I don't need a compromise. I need silence. Karen stood there a moment longer. She looked at my yard clean, quiet. Then at me calm, unmoved. And she understood. There was no one left to push. She said nothing more, turned and walked away. Still proud, still confident. But now I knew one thing. Even if she never admits she was wrong, my peace no longer depends on her. Almost a month had passed. The neighborhood was quiet. No loud complaints, no warnings. I had gotten used to the silence. It became familiar. And then Karen again. She stood near her yard. No notepad, no usual, I run this place expression. For the first time, just a person. She walked over slowly, stopped a few meters away.
Hey, my grandmother passed away. Recently.
I didn't say anything.
And I think I finally understand you a little. What you went through back then, it was unfair. I'm sorry.
I nodded, no emotion. She looked at me for a few more seconds.
I don't know if it changes anything,
She added.
but I wanted you to know I didn't do it to hurt you. I just didn't think.
She was about to turn away, but suddenly glanced at my car near the curb.
And by the way, you're still not parking to standard, so if you get fined next time, don't be surprised.
Karen smiled, that same smile as always, and walked away. Still proud, still confident. Some people are capable of admitting the harm they've caused, but they never really change. I ripped the red notice off my door, veins pulsing in my hand. $500 for an exotic pet. Nonsense. My black cat Whiskers hisses, arching his back, yellow eyes blazing. Across the street, Karen, HOA president, stands on her porch, smirking with a stack of new fines in hand. I crumple the paper, heart pounding. My voice, full of fury, but restrained. HOA Karen thinks her rules will crush me. She doesn't know I wrote them myself and have a surprise in store for her. Now let's tell this story from the beginning. 6 months ago, Karen moved into Oakwood Heights. Her house, with its garish purple trim and tacky fountain, became an instant legend. I'm an attorney who's lived here for 15 years, and I didn't know she'd become my nightmare. For 10 years, I served as the HOA's legal counsel, drafting bylaws to protect neighbors, not choke them. Karen didn't know that. She showed up and started barking orders. She banned Rodriguez's lanterns, calling them too ethnic. She fined Mrs. Chen for her memorial stones, claiming they ruined the view. I watched from the sidelines thinking she'd burn out, but then she came for Whiskers. Big mistake, Karen. Big mistake. I drive to the city archive, where old HOA records are stored. The dusty shelves reek of paper and mildew. I flip through the bylaws, Whiskers purring in his carrier at my feet. The line reads, "Exotic pets prohibited." I scoff. Exotic? Whiskers, you're only a threat to my curtains. Back home, Bob, the treasurer calls. He whispers. Karen pushed through new rules at the meeting. She's targeting 6 homeowners. It's her neighborhood improvement plan. I spread out the archive folders. The air grows heavy with tension. That evening, Karen bangs on Mrs. Chen's door with a stack of papers. Her voice trembles.
These memorial stones, they're all I have left of my husband.
Karen shoves a notice at her without blinking. I watch from my window, fists clenched, the folder creaking in my hand. My voice, full of resolve. Enough. Time to remind her who knows the rules. I open my laptop, digging through bylaw files. Whiskers jumps on the desk, knocking over a pen. His eyes gleam, like he's ready for a fight. HOA meeting. Karen sits at the head, tapping her pink nails. I walk in with my folder, footsteps echoing. Half the board is missing, replaced by Karen's friends, Linda and others. Good evening, I say, sitting. Let's discuss my so-called exotic fine. Karen sighs.
Rules are rules. Your cat violates Section 8. The fine stands. Expect more penalties in 30 days.
I pull out veterinary records. Whiskers is a regular cat. Here's his paperwork. Speaking of rules, your fountain and flamingos, Karen. Section 7.3, if I'm not mistaken. Karen flushes, her voice cracking.
Those are works of art, not decorations.
The room goes quiet. I press on. I'd like the minutes from the last 6 months and records of the board changes. Karen blinks, her eye twitching.
They're being reorganized. Let's get back to your cat issue.
I read aloud a letter from the former president approving Whiskers. The room buzzes. Karen jumps up.
I declare this meeting officially closed. No further discussion.
She bolts, heels clacking. My voice icy. She thinks it's over? It's just the start. Night. In my office, I sketch a map of the neighborhood. Red marks for fined homes, all elderly or living alone. Karen's friends, no fines. Purple trim, a van, that fountain. I hear footsteps. Karen is photographing my door. I activate my security camera. Gotcha, I think. I call City Hall. Karen never filed permits for her home additions. Her election as president is questionable due to voting irregularities. My eyes burn. She's playing dirty, but I know how to stop her. I meet Robert, the former maintenance supervisor at a cafe. He hands me a folder. Kept everything. Denied repairs, contracts to Karen's brother, false accusations against residents. The documents are littered with signatures. I nod, my voice resolute. This isn't about my cat, it's about the whole neighborhood. I organize secret meetings in the local park. We share stories, fines for kids' chalk drawings, a basketball hoop, Mrs. Chen's memorial stones. Bob slips me a USB drive. I track the finances, thousands for maintenance, but the pool's closed and the roads are crumbling. Spreadsheets reveal missing funds, my voice seething. Karen thought we were blind. She was wrong. Lisa from the clerk's office calls. The HOA has no legal standing. Karen never registered it properly. I slap my forehead. She fined us without authority? That's too much. Time to end this circus for good. Final meeting. The hall is packed. Even Jenkins with his cane is here. Karen sits, her smile strained. I approach the podium with my folder. She pales. Before we talk about my cat, let's address some violations. I spread a neighborhood map on the table. Red marks for homes Karen fined, all her election opponents. The crowd gasps. Fines target those who voted against you. Now, your violations, Karen. I lay out receipts. Her purple trim, fountain, flamingos. Karen screams.
This is harassment and baseless accusations.
I pull out the bylaws. No, Karen. Section 8.2, documenting violations, written by me. The room falls silent. I show Mrs. Chen's notice. A fine for stones allowed under Section 5.7. This isn't just a violation, it's cruelty. Mrs. Chen weeps. Neighbors comfort her. Karen stands.
All of this is speculation and empty words.
Bob rises. What about finances? Unauthorized fees. Money vanishing into thin air. Karen grabs her bag, shouting,
I'll sue every single one of you. You'll regret this.
I smile. Section 12.8. Legal threats carry a $1,000 fine. Shall I add it to your tab? The crowd laughs. I spread the bylaws with my signature on the table. I wrote these rules to protect people, not oppress them. Karen is speechless. I show receipts for her purple trim next to fines she issued for paint. Section 4.2. Wrote it after the 2010 paint color debate. I display her friend's violations. Bob adds. Bank statements. Fees targeted those who complained about the board. Karen leaps up, face purple.
This is a witch hunt, and I won't stand for it.
I raise a hand. Section 9.3. Threats mean removal and fines. Care to continue? Mrs. Chen stands, voice shaking.
When Henry died, I wanted stones to remember him. You fined me $1,000, but I found your newsletter approving your friend's fountain.
Neighbors share evidence. Receipts showing Karen's own fines for violations like her fountain. Karen interrupts, but I pull out the bylaws.
Just rumors. Show me the original bylaws right now.
I lay out the bylaws with my signature and notary stamp. Article 7, Section 3. No selective enforcement for personal vendettas. Wrote it after the last tyrant. Vote. Karen is removed. The new board approves Mrs. Chen's stones. Neighbors plant a garden around them. Whiskers gets an amendment. All cats are approved residents. I hang his HOA inspector certificate next to my law degree. Karen receives a $5,000 fine for violating the bylaws and is ordered to pay $10,000 in legal fees for the HOA's illegal actions. A newspaper publishes an article about her schemes, and Karen becomes an outcast. I never thought I'd wake up to the sound of splashing water in my own backyard, especially since I hadn't invited anyone over. At first, I thought it was just a trick of my mind. I wasn't fully awake yet, but as I walked closer to the window, something felt off. Peering through the blinds, I saw a group of children laughing and playing in my pool. HOA Karen stood nearby, whistle in hand, barking orders like a drill sergeant. My pool was being used for a swim class. Without my permission, fuming, I stormed outside. "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing?" Karen turned to me, unfazed.
Hello, neighbor. I run the community swim lessons. The HOA approved it.
Karen smirked. "The HOA doesn't own my pool," I snapped. "This is private property."
Well, the community guidelines state that amenities should be shared.
I couldn't believe the audacity. After a heated exchange, she finally gathered the kids and left. but not before warning me that I was violating community spirit. Determined to reclaim my space, I devised a plan. That night, I purchased several industrial-sized bags of ice and dumped them into the pool. By morning, the water was frigid. As expected, Karen returned with her swim class. The moment the kids touched the icy water, they screamed and scrambled out. Parents looked on in horror. Karen's smug confidence began to crack.
This is obviously just some childish prank.
She stammered.
We'll be back next week when I get everything sorted out.
One of the parents scoffed and grabbed his things.
Yeah, I'm not bringing my kid back here. This is ridiculous.
Others nodded in agreement, collecting their towels and muttering as they left. Karen watched her so-called students walk away one by one. Her face turned red with fury.
You're going to regret this.
She hissed. I tilted my head. Am I? Because it seems to me that your little business just lost all its customers. Clenching her fists, she stormed off, her whistle hanging uselessly around her neck. That evening, I reviewed my security footage, which had captured the entire incident. The next morning, I uploaded the video online. Within hours, it went viral. Comments poured in, praising the way I handled the situation. Some even suggested new ideas to keep her out permanently. The video reached the wider neighborhood. I started receiving messages from neighbors. Some laughing at Karen's meltdown, others thanking me for exposing how she and the HOA had been manipulating the community. That night, I received an email from the HOA. It was a formal notice stating that Karen was no longer authorized to conduct any community-related activities involving my pool. I laughed out loud. It was a pathetic attempt to save face, but it confirmed that they knew they had lost. For the next few days, Karen was nowhere to be seen. My backyard was peaceful, but I knew Karen well enough to know she wasn't the type to back down without a fight. Sure enough, I received an official-looking letter from the HOA, accusing me of creating a neighborhood disturbance and deliberately making shared community resources unusable. They were trying to fine me for what I had done to my own pool. I took the notice straight to my lawyer. He barely glanced at the paper before shaking his head.
They don't have a leg to stand on,
He said.
This is an obvious abuse of power.
I sent an official response back, making it clear that any attempt to fine me over my private property would result in legal action. Less than 24 hours later, I received a new email from the HOA president. The fine had been reconsidered and was no longer applicable. But Karen wasn't done. The next morning, I saw her lurking outside my house with 2 HOA board members. I stepped outside before they could knock.
We need to have a discussion.
Karen said. About what? I asked.
There have been multiple complaints about your behavior toward other community members.
One of the board members said. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, and who exactly has been complaining? Karen jumped in.
You've been harassing neighbors, creating unnecessary drama, and refusing to cooperate with the HOA's decisions.
I almost laughed. You mean the same HOA that tried to claim my pool as public property?
We're here to find a solution that works for everyone.
Another board member said, Here's my solution. Karen stays off my property. End of discussion. Karen scoffed.
That's not going to work.
Then I guess we don't have anything to talk about. The board members shifted uncomfortably.
We'd rather not escalate this into something more serious.
I let out a short chuckle. More serious than trespassing, unauthorized business operations, and HOA corruption? Karen's face twisted with fury.
You think you're so smart, don't you? This isn't over.
You already lost, I said. You just haven't accepted it yet. She glared at me before turning on her heel and storming off. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of loud, aggressive banging on my door. 2 police officers stood on my porch.
Good morning.
One said.
Are you the homeowner?
I nodded. Yeah. What's going on?
We received a report of public endangerment involving a body of water on your property.
It took me half a second to realize what was happening. Karen had called the cops on me. I sighed. Let me guess. My pool? The officer nodded.
We have a report stating that you've made it hazardous and that it's posing a risk to children in the neighborhood.
I almost laughed. Feel free to take a look. The officers walked into the backyard. The pool, now clear of ice, had returned to its usual state, still undisturbed. One of the officers glanced around and spoke up.
Seems like everything is in order here.
He said, a bit puzzled.
No signs of hazard.
That's right. I never invited anyone to use my pool. Karen and her so-called swim class were trespassing. The officers exchanged glances.
As far as we're concerned, you haven't broken any laws. Your pool is on private property, and you can do whatever you want with it.
I smiled. Would you mind writing up a report saying that, just in case she tries anything else?
Absolutely.
As they left, I noticed Karen standing across the street, watching the entire exchange. The second she realized I was looking at her, she turned and walked away. That was the moment I knew I had won. She had pulled every trick she could think of, manipulating the HOA, gathering fake complaints, even calling the cops, and none of it had worked. She was out of options. That evening, I sat outside with a drink in hand, watching the sunset reflect off the now peaceful water. No uninvited guests, no entitled demands. Just me and my property, exactly as it should have been from the start. But just when I thought the matter had settled, I received an unexpected knock on my door 1 week later. This time, it was another letter from the HOA. At first glance, it seemed like more of the same, a thinly veiled threat. But then I noticed something odd. At the bottom of the letter, there was a line I hadn't seen before. Pending an investigation into your actions, the HOA is suspending all fees related to maintenance of communal spaces, effective immediately. It was a small victory, but it meant something. Even the HOA knew they had been in the wrong all along. No matter how many times Karen tried to rally them, my rights were undeniable. I laughed to myself, realizing I had turned her petty vendetta into something that worked out in my favor. The pool was still mine, and now the whole neighborhood had learned to respect the boundaries I had set. I arrived at my farm after a long absence, but when I looked at my gate, I was speechless. A cluster of unfamiliar cars parked haphazardly along my driveway. Frowning, I marched over, only to find a bright orange sign posted on my fence. HOA designated parking area. Unauthorized vehicles will be towed at owner's expense. And standing there, arms crossed and grinning smugly, was none other than Karen, the self-important HOA president. What the hell is this, Karen?
Oh, haven't you heard? The HOA voted to designate this area as a community parking lot. Your land was underutilized, so we thought we'd make it more useful for the neighborhood.
I nearly laughed. She had no idea who she was messing with. Karen's reign of terror had been escalating for months. Ever since she took the position of HOA president, she had implemented rule after rule, each more absurd than the last. What had once been a peaceful suburban neighborhood had become a land of constant scrutiny and petty grievances. First, she banned pickup trucks because they were deemed too rural-looking. This didn't just affect farmers or ranchers. It meant contractors, landscapers, and even delivery trucks had to park miles away, leaving homeowners to deal with the inconvenience of hauling equipment on foot. The absurdity of this rule hit especially hard when she forced workers to park in the designated visitor parking areas, which were often filled by her HOA-approved sedans. Next came her attack on livestock. Claiming certain breeds of animals were unfit for a suburban environment, she began demanding that families remove their pets and farm animals. One particularly tragic case was that of the Johnsons, who were forced to rehome their beloved goats simply because they didn't fit into her ideal neighborhood. But that was only the beginning. Karen soon turned her attention to something that many didn't even think could be controlled: fences. She insisted that all property fences be painted a specific shade of beige. No exceptions. It didn't matter if the fence was sturdy or aesthetically pleasing in its own right. If it wasn't the exact shade of beige, you'd get a warning. I still remember the moment I received my warning because my wooden fence was too rustic. How could a simple wooden fence be a crime? But in Karen's world, apparently, everything was a crime. She even went so far as to ban outdoor grills, but only if they weren't HOA-approved models. The best part? The approved grills were sold by none other than her cousin, giving her a sweet little side business at the expense of every homeowner's freedom. Setting curfews for backyard lights was another gem in her ever-growing list of absurdities. She claimed that lights disrupted the peaceful ambiance of the neighborhood, and if you didn't turn them off by 10 p.m. sharp, you would face a fine. The worst part was that no one was ever really sure if Karen was watching from her window or if she just had a squad of HOA goons lurking in the shadows to catch anyone breaking her rules. And now, after all of these ridiculous regulations, she had the audacity to claim my land as her personal parking lot. The nerve! I was fed up. She had pushed me and the rest of the neighborhood too far, and this was the last straw. That evening, as I sorted through my mail, I found an official-looking letter with the HOA's seal stamped across it. The letter stated, "Due to your refusal to comply with the new parking designation, fines will be imposed. Failure to adhere to HOA regulations may result in legal action." Legal action? Over my own land? I couldn't believe it. Karen was trying to bully me into submission by threatening me with her overbearing rules. But what she didn't realize was that she had just picked the wrong fight. I clenched my jaw, the anger bubbling up inside me. Karen thought she could just walk all over me like she had with everyone else. Little did she know, I had a few tricks up my sleeve that would make her think twice before crossing me again. The next morning, they arrived like conquerors. HOA members strutted onto my property as if they owned the place, barking orders and waving their clipboards, directing cars onto my fields without a second thought. Tires dug into the soil, leaving deep ruts in the once pristine earth, while Karen stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching with a satisfied smirk. But there was one thing they didn't know. My land was connected to the HOA's main power grid. With a single flick of a switch, I shut it all down. The entire neighborhood went dark. For a moment, there was silence. Then, panic. Phones went dead. Wi-Fi disappeared. Smart homes became nothing more than expensive boxes. Garage doors jammed, leaving cars trapped inside. Alarm systems blared, their sirens howling into the night. Confused residents stumbled out onto their porches, voices rising in frustration, demanding answers. And then came Karen. She stormed toward me, her face red with fury, gripping her ever-present pink HOA folder like it was some holy decree.
What did you do?
I leaned casually against my fence, watching her flounder. "Oh, haven't you heard?" I mimicked her condescending tone. "The property owner has designated this power supply for private use. Your community electricity was underutilized, so I thought I'd make it more useful for myself." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air.
What did you do?
I raised an eyebrow. "The HOA will what? Take me to court? Please do. I'd love to hear you explain to a judge why you think you have the right to steal my land." And, as it turned out, that's exactly what happened. A week later, we found ourselves in court. Karen sat stiffly at the plaintiff's table, flanked by her increasingly panicked HOA board. Her usual smugness was gone, replaced by a nervous, forced composure as she clutched her ever-present pink folder like a life raft. Meanwhile, I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, completely at ease. My lawyer, who, by the way, specialized in property law, stood confidently before the judge, outlining the sheer absurdity of Karen's actions. She had illegally designated private property as a public space. She had attempted to fine a non-HOA member. And worst of all, she had been charging parking fees to the very residents she had forced to use my land. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs as the details unfolded. The judge, a stern-looking man with a tired expression, rubbed his temples before turning to Karen.
Mrs. Peterson, do you have anything to say for yourself?
Karen's knuckles whitened as she gripped her folder tighter. She flipped through the pages as if searching for a loophole and escape, any excuse to justify her overreach.
I was just enforcing community standards. We were improving the neighborhood.
The judge exhaled slowly, his patience wearing thin.
The only thing you were improving was your own pocket.
He leveled her with a sharp gaze.
This HOA has grossly overstepped its authority. Effective immediately, all fines and parking fees are voided. The defendant is awarded damages for trespassing and harassment.
He paused, then smirked.
And as for the HOA, you are now under investigation for financial misconduct.
A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. The HOA board members exchanged wide-eyed glances, realizing the gravity of the situation. Karen's face went pale.
You can't do this. The HOA will...
She blurted, half standing. I rose from my seat, straightening my jacket with a slow, deliberate movement. Oh, but we can. I met her panicked gaze head-on. And as of today, I am officially cutting the HOA's access to my power grid. Good luck finding another source. Karen opened her mouth to protest, but no words came out.